there was high-profile men coming to King's Cross and buying children. It was like going to a coffee shop and buying a cup of coffee, you know. They'd just come down and be able to purchase a kid. I went from this bubbly little boy to silent, literally silent. I was so afraid of getting backhanded, hit, slapped, punched or sexually abused that I just ceased being a person. I was just like this little shadow. You'd see little boys sitting in there and all these different men and people I used to see come to there, and the war, specifically the war, was some people that would blow your mind. You know, some of the most powerful people in our country. I'm talking about teachers, principals, lawyers, politicians. I saw him and just this anger came over me. I thought, I'm going to say something to this guy. And I walked up and I said, one day I'm going to tell the world what you did. And I just kept thinking, they're never going to get him. They're never going to get him. So what we want you to do is wear a wire. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm not wearing a wire. But I did. I remember walking out that station and thought, no one's going to ever hurt me again. That's it. It's over. No person will ever touch me, control me, or hurt me again. Little did I know, I was literally walking into a predator's paradise. The place was littered with them.
Today's guest, Glen Fisher, has experienced things in his life that no one should have to go through. Violence and abuse, on a scale that will shock you. I don't even know how to describe what Glen has been through, let down by his family, and let down by the authorities, who are meant to be helping him. How he is even alive, I think, is a miracle in itself. We discuss heavy topics on I Catch Killers, but today I think it's appropriate to provide a content warning. We'll be discussing child sexual abuse, murder, violence, and a child protection system that failed Glen, who is living on the streets in King's Cross, being preyed on by predators. Glen spoke very openly about how he got revenge on the people who sexually abused him, his addiction to drugs, his times in jail, trying to take his own life, and how he turned his life around so he could help others. Have a listen to what Glen has been through, and his views on life I think will amaze you. It's a heavy chat, but Glen's story definitely needs to be told. Glen Fisher, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Hey mate, how you going? Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, I'm going to apologise up front because your name has come up to me so many times over the years, and you should get Glen Fisher on the podcast, and we've got a lot of mutual contacts and friends. Yeah. And on reflection, I think I sort of shied away from it because I knew your story. I had an understanding of your story, how heavy it was, and I don't think I was just ready to deal with it. And you would understand that. Like, it's just, it's a dark world that you came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's honest.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate that, actually.
Yeah, and I thought, I've got to reach out to Glen. And then our mate Adam Smith, who I first met in prison, he called me and put you straight on the phone. So I was pretty well stuffed. And I've gone, okay, well, I can't hide anymore. Yeah. So a shout out to Adam for bringing us together.
What a great man. I love watching people redeem themselves, and that's what Atchi's doing.
Yeah. It is good, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's really good, and doing some positive stuff.
Yeah.
As you are, and we'll talk about that because I think it's quite amazing how you've turned your life around, and we will talk about your childhood. And I got to say, it was horrific. And that's the thing. Like childhood, you expect to be loved and nurtured and looked after. So to come through what you've come through, it's quite amazing.
I think that I've come to an understanding now that my mum specifically was really unwell. Yeah. And my dad, well, he was just a grub, he's a predator. You can't explain that. But I think my mum was very unwell. She had schizophrenia, alcoholic. She suffered with addictions and mental health issues. Yeah. So.
Well, you get that understanding as you get older, don't you? The world becomes a little bit clearer and you start putting the pieces together of what took place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that looking at my own situation and my own circumstances, myself being a parent and knowing that how hard the things in my life have impacted me. Yeah. So.
In prepping for the podcast, I've watched some of your interviews and read the book and heard you speak. And there's one thing that really jumped out to me, and it's when you confronted one of your abusers, Simon Davies, and we'll talk more about that. But you bumped him on the streets of King's Cross, and you told him pretty much word for word. I'll read it out. One day I'm going to write a book and expose you. and I will hold you accountable and tell the world what you have done. Now, Simon Davies is a convicted pedophile, but he sort of laughed at you and said, you're a junkie. You're not going to be alive by the age of 21 and you can't even write. So what are you going to do to me?
Yeah,
well,
both those things were true at the time,
Yeah.
you know. But the problem was by him saying that, like I think that it might have been an idle threat.
Yeah.
But when he laughed in my face, I thought, you know, fuck you. I said, I'll come back to you, bro. And it took me a while, you know, because I had a heroin habit to deal with and a lot to process. But I did exactly what I said I would do and held him and others accountable. I wrote my book, and now I'm telling the world.
Yeah, well, good on you.
Absolutely.
And he got convicted. Tell us about where you fronted him. Was it by chance meeting, or you sought him out?
No, so what happened was he was opposite the train station on the main street of King's Cross.
Yeah.
It was just after the loss of my partner at the time, that we'll talk about later. And I saw him, and just this anger came over me. I thought, I'm going to say something to this guy. And I walked up and I said, one day I'm going to tell the world what you did.
Yeah.
You know? And I said, one day I'm going to hold you accountable. And I said, I'm going to write a book, because he was an author.
Yeah.
You know, that's what kind of inspired that thought process. And like I said, he just started laughing at me. And, you know, you're a junkie, you'll be dead by the age of 21. You can't even read and write. I had to fill out your forms at the refuge, which took me back because both those things were true. I was a heroin addict, and I couldn't read and write, not properly. I could read and write a little, but I was kind of illiterate.
Doesn't that tell you a lot about the type of person he is? Like that, like beating down on a virtual kid with all the history, and we're not even dragging in at this stage the fact that the sexual abuse, but the type of person he is, like just crush anyone that's in his way. Yeah,
that's exactly him, you know. And as a kid, it's funny because the very things that I see in him now that I despise were the very things that I admired in him when I first met him. He was articulate, he was clever, he was surrounded by high-profile people like prime ministers, things like that. So, you know, he was easy to impress, you know, a little boy that didn't know the world.
That's the creepiness of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
They put themselves in the perception from the public is that they're fine, upstanding citizens, and they couldn't be further from the truth.
No, that's right. They get themselves into positions of power and positions of trust, and attack the most vulnerable. You know, one of the things that one of my abusers said, they wore a wire. I had to wear a wire on one of my abusers, Grant Morris, and he said in front of them, he said, we targeted prepubescent children that come from broken homes that no one give a shit about. Yeah. And I was sitting with a detective and two undercover detectives at the time, and everything in my body wanted to jump the counter, you know, and you know, react to that. But I knew that there was a process that he was slowly bringing himself down, and we got him as well. But geez, it hurt when he said it, because, you know, I wasn't the only one there. There was, you know, people that I love very dearly, and that were also kids that were abused by these people.
And this is the nature of the crime with these predators. It's not a one-off thing, and you would have seen in your time in prison people that make mistakes, lash out, or something goes wrong. Yeah. But these people plan, don't they? They're predators is the right word for them, because they look for their victims. They're always hunting.
Absolutely. One of the things a copper said to me once, because I didn't want to give evidence, I was scared to go through all that process, and he said to me, Glenn, and he kind of was not right to say, but it worked. He said that every person that he abuses, they're after you. By you not speaking up is kind of on you. You know, if you don't come forward and say something, this guy, they go on to continue. And I couldn't live with that, bro. Yeah. I couldn't.
It's a true thing, but there's a big weight to place on.
It was,
place on you. But you got the results. But you talk about being angry, and I want to ask you up front, like, speaking to you and getting a sense, and there's a calmness about you, and how have you let the anger go? Because when our listeners hear the story of your childhood and what you've been through, and then not just through the family environment, but then the people that were meant to protect you. Yeah. Like, I could understand why you would be the most angry human being if you were still around and not completely broken. You would be angry. How have you managed to let that go?
So for a lot of my life, that is who I was. Every little thing or big thing that would happen, my first emotion was always anger, and it was like a child. It was childlike, rah, you know, screaming and yelling like a kid. And but what happens was I started treating my trauma, and I started working on it. One of the things I realised that anger was a secondary emotion. Right. That when I started to understand that there was actually something behind my anger, usually resentment, rejection, hurt, some other kind of feeling. And I used to keep a book, a reflections book, and at the end of each day, after any incidents that I'd have, I'd sit down and I'd write it all out. And I started to realise that I'm actually really hurt underneath. Right. It's more hurt than anger. I had a lot of rejection, you know, in my life, and so they were the feelings I'd feel. And it was like everything in the past, like I'd be arguing over an apple, something silly, but all of that would come to the apple, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I've learned to place, if something happens now, it's about now. It's not about my past. And
Right.
and I think my having a family has definitely softened me as well. I don't want to see history repeat.
Well, yeah, full credit to you because, I see and a lot of people have sat in the seat where you're sitting that have had tough upbringings and you understand, but yours is right up there.
Yeah.
In terms of what happened. Tell us about your childhood, like early memories and through. Just tell us your story because I think people are going to be shocked and amazed.
Yeah, so I mean, my first memories are in I'm not sure if it was a rehab or a commune or what it was, but we were living in some place, and I remember being there. But my parents got chucked out for some reason, and we moved to North Sydney, Neutral Bay.
Yep.
I remember that my mum and dad's friend was a pedophile, like my dad, and at there, I just remember all these violent confrontations between my parents where my dad and mum would get drunk and they'd physically fight each other. They would always call me out to referee, the oldest of the kids. Yeah, Glenn, come out here, and then I'd go out. And there's no winning, Gary. Like, no matter which side I choose, I've lost to the other, you know what I mean? And but the violence, like in North Sydney, the first violent incident that I remember was my mum and dad had this huge big fight, screaming and yelling at each other. And then my mum told me to go with my dad, so I went and got in the car with my dad in this white ute, and we're driving around a corner, and then just randomly he reaches over, opens the door, and just goes boot and kicks me straight out of the car. Like, I don't know how fast it was going, but I remember skidding along the road and taking all skin off my shoulders, my elbows, and it was like. And that's like, it gets worse. The violence in my life was just, just gets worse. But what happens is in 1970, we moved to Mount Druitt. What ends up happening first is that I come home from school. So the first thing that happens is I'm sitting outside of our house and a guy gets shot dead. A guy shoots his brother in the house directly across from where we were. And I'm just sitting on the veranda watching it, and nobody's sort of pulled me inside.
How old are we talking?
5.
Oh, so that when you're being kicked out of the car, you are
a little boy,
an
absolute infant, And but the reason I talk about the guy getting shot dead was because about a week after that, I was walking up my street from kindergarten to come home, and I saw a bull wagon out the front of my house, and I'm now 7. And what happened is, as I'm walking up the driveway and I see the bull wagon out the front of my house, I think, what's going on? Has someone hurt my dad? Has someone hurt my mum? Have they hurt my siblings? So I kind of rush in. My dad's been arrested for pedophilia charges. He's in the back of the car. And my mum's drunk, talking to the police, and they're, screaming and yelling and stuff, and I'm buzzing around like, what's going on, like a kid does.
You couldn't even comprehend.
No, I couldn't comprehend. And the funny thing was, despite all the violence in my life, I still had this deep love for my dad and my mum.
Yeah.
I just did. And but the other thing I remember was lots of promiscuity.
Yeah.
What was actually happening was he was abusing me, and my dad was abusing his kids. And I have flickbacks and flashbacks, of him getting me to get on top of his 2 daughters, whose names I won't say.
Yeah.
But I have all these kind of memories. But what ends up happening is my dad gets taken to jail, and we get taken to an orphanage in Lewisham. They dump us in this Lewisham. My mum, we get out about a week or so later, and then we get put back again. My mum slashes up. She cuts 100 stitches in one arm and 120 in the other. She goes through a window or something and gets, stitches in her arms. She ends up getting my 2 younger siblings out, but leaves my brother and I there. But it's when we come out that life really takes a turn for the worst. I go back to live with my mother. The first incident is my mother's you ever heard of Beck's and Vincent powders?
No, I remember them.
Well,
in the little
yellow boxes.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Whippy trucks back then used to bring them, and she could hear the ding, ding, ding of the Mr. Whippy truck, So suddenly she's scurrying around the house looking for coin, and I'm sitting in the lounge room, and she goes, "You stole my money off you, didn't you, little C?" And I'm like, I didn't take nothing, Mum. I wouldn't have had the courage to do that, She says, "I'll cut your fingers off if you did," and I'm like, and anyway, she picks up a carving knife, she just goes whoosh, throws it at me, and I literally moves from a big sharp carving knife. And then this other girl comes to the door and she goes, "Help me get this little prick in the bathroom." And then they're dragging me down to the bathroom, and she literally holds me over, like you can see the scars of my finger. She literally holds my fingers over the edge of the sink, and she puts the knife against it and just pushes. And she didn't really cut, she just pushes and just severs straight into 2 of my fingers. And then bang, I just dropped to the floor. And it was the first time, that was a whole new level of violence that I'd experienced. I've been hit, punched, kicked, you name it.
But this is with a weapon.
This is with a weapon.
Very controlled, drag you in, do the bathroom.
Yeah.
And the friend that...
Yeah, I still can't believe that she helped to do it.
How old are we talking?
Well,
You-
am I?
Yeah.
I'm so 9.
Right.
I'm 9 years old when this happened. And the young girl, she was only 15, so I only just found out that my mother had a relationship with this young girl.
Right.
So that, she's kind of a victim too,
Yeah.
if that kind of makes sense. But the part that angers me about it the most is when they took me to the hospital, I've got a doctor on this side stitching my finger up. I've got a lady on this side. I've got carpet burn all over me from being dragged along the carpet. She's dabbing and tapping me and stuff. And then the doctor says to my mum, "What happened to this little boy?" She starts screaming her head off, and then bang, both silent. Not another word said.
People, and we're going back a long time, and the world was a different place. But that's where we failed the kids, wasn't it? And a doctor, and it's probably easier just to
Say nothing.
say nothing and turn a blind eye to it. And I think it's because it's so confronting to people.
And I get that.
Yeah, but it's no excuse. I honestly, I've mentioned, I don't know your thoughts on it, but I think we should go after people that know. Too often, I've heard kids being sexually assaulted, and it's not just the predator that's doing the sexual assault. Other people knew about it, and I think we need to make a law on that. That you can be an accessory to murder. You can aid and abet, that type of thing. I think if you know that a child's been sexually abused, not just like teachers or the rules that are brought in now, I think there's an onus on everyone. And if you turn a blind eye to it, you should be potentially held responsible for that.
Gary, one of the things that I've always maintained, and I'll say it till the day I die, I hold more anger, and you'll hear as my story goes, those who are complicit and knew and did nothing than those who actually abused me. Those who abuse me, I can put that in a box. I can get that. But the ones that know and stand by and do nothing at all, I can't fathom that. As a father, as a man, as a human, if I see something wrong, I step in. I step in. And I just can't understand how people, through my story, and as you'll hear as we go along, there are so many of them, and people in positions of absolute power who could have done something. Yeah,
there's no excuse, and they all need to take a long, hard look at themselves. And I've stepped in on things whilst in the cops and even in roles outside the cops, and it doesn't make you popular, and it's ugly and it's messy, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm sick of people saying, "Oh, well, it wasn't our business," and it's everyone's business to protect kids.
Absolutely, every single person's responsibility.
So the family friend, when you were first sexually assaulted, what was the dynamics there? How did that occur?
So what happened just after the severing of the fingers, comes over to visit. And so one of the things my mother was doing was giving me sleeping pills to sleep all the time, because apparently I was hyperactive. That's what it says in my doc's files. Yeah. So she's giving me these sleeping pills, and one night I'm asleep in my bed, and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm being sexually abused from behind. And when I wake up, grabs my face, puts his hand around my mouth and just goes really hard and then lets me go. Yep. And I'm 9 years old. I don't even know what's happening or what's happened to me. I just know that I'm in a lot of pain, and there's a lot of gross stuff going on from that, including bleeding. And I remember sitting on my bed, rocking back and forth, like trying to process what's just happened to me. And I remember walking across to the bathroom and seeing my mother, on the nod, she's on the blink, and he's taken advantage of that moment and bang, come into my room and done what he done. And it was like I had that happen at the same, just not long after my fingers had just been severed. So that's two serious things that happened, And it was like I went from this bubbly little boy to silent, literally silent. Like it was like I was walking on eggshells everywhere I went. I was so afraid of getting backhanded, hit, slapped, punched, or sexually abused that I just ceased being a person. I was just like this little shadow getting around.
You wouldn't know what life was about, would you? You would have no understanding. Like, where's your reference point? Where's the people that you can trust or guide you? And with that, you touched on it early, that your father, who was a convicted pedophile, who was taken away, this was his mate, and they were swapping their kids.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he also was very violent. His violence looked different to my mum. My mum's a volatile, drunk, violent. She just suddenly would explode. Yeah. My dad's was more contained. I used to sit like this next to my dad all the time, because suddenly my face would just go numb, and he'd backhand. It'd be something I'd done weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, you didn't do whatever, and bang, and my face would go numb. My nose is like that from being hit so many times by my dad, and it's like, I was so afraid as a kid. And what made it worse was when I went to school, people had learnt that If they did that to me, I was doing this. My whole childhood, I was jumping all the time. And people thought it was funny. And, I mean, they're kids. They don't know.
They wouldn't know, but I could imagine that would be hilarious for
them,
kids
yeah.
at that age.
Yeah, and they're doing it to me all the time. And I literally can't, it's like I know they're going to do it. I know my body's going to react, and I'm literally concentrating, trying not to do it. But it just couldn't stop. It was like an involuntary reaction to that trauma.
While all this was going on, did any teachers or anyone get a sense of what's going on? Were you taken to school counsellors? Did they even have school counsellors back then?
The saddest part of my story is it's documented. I have pages like
You've got
that
the docs
big.
file.
I've got docs files, and it literally said Glen has a black eye. Glen has this. Like there's so many reported incidents. Glenn's been telling us that his mother's giving him sleeping tablets to make him sleep. Like it's all documented. It's literally all documented. I never said the words "I'm being raped," but I said they're hurting me. That's the words I used.
Well,
that's a child's word.
Yeah.
They're hurting me. And but they just kept putting me back. But in 1972, a psychologist, after my mother went into hospital for that, said these children must be removed from this severely disturbing home. That's the word, severely disturbing home. And yet 2 weeks later, again, we're returned to this violent psychopath.
Right.
And as much as I feel sad for my mother, what she was doing to us kids, me specifically, was just beyond comprehension. It was, you couldn't write this stuff.
No, well, that's why I said at the start, people are going to be shocked by what you've gone through. With when your father was charged with the sexual assault, did he of children? Did he get the custodial sentence?
Yeah.
So he was out of the family home? Yeah,
he was out of the family home until, I don't know, he's the one that actually got me out of Lewisham. So my mother came twice to Lewisham to get us out. Yeah. And then my dad, when he got out of jail, he got us out. But then as soon as he got us out and they learnt wind of that, I got put back with my mum straight away.
Right.
So, I've never been able to trace the charges. I know he's been charged twice. Yeah. And people won't give me that information because it's on my dad, which is frustrating. And but I know what I know. I know what I remember, and it was consistent, and it was all.
He's passed away now.
My dad died just before Christmas last year, and my brother within days of each other. One had a brain tumour, and my dad died of bodily dementia. Yeah. I actually went up there, Gary, and my sister reached out and said, "Dad's going to die. He's got Lewy dementia," and I didn't know much about dementia, and I thought I'm going to go up, and I had all this stuff I wanted to say. I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, and I'm driving up there, and I'm crying like I want to get this out of me, And then I walked in, and my memories of this big, strong man, and what I saw was this tiny, fragile man. Took 15 minutes to get one side of the bed to the other. I actually made a video on social media about it, and I just sat down and I breathed out, and I said, "You know what? I forgive you." And I had to, hurts me saying it, but I had to forgive him, Gary, because I've got a family, and I was carrying that anger in me so deeply, and I thought, I'm not forgiving him for him. I'm forgiving for me so that I can have some peace and have some sort of life going forward.
I get that, and sometimes it seems counterintuitive that how do I forgive an arsehole that's done what he's done to you, but it's about you. Are you going to let the anger destroy you?
No, that's right.
You're going to your revenge is the fact that you live a good life, and to say if that helps you to say you forgive him.
Yeah,
good on you.
That's right. And I started to see one of the worst things in our world, from my perspective, is generational trauma, generational abuse, all the things of generational labour. And that was going to be my story because of the way I was acting. And I was fighting every man that I could. Yeah. Didn't care if I win, lose or not. I had so much anger. Yeah. And then I realised what I was doing was having an impact on people I love. And I knew I had to do something about this, or history will repeat. And because that's what happens, hurt people, even without intent, and it might look different each time. And for me, it was attacking people all over the place. And it's like, and what I used to do is I'd target someone that had bullied someone else, and it was like a way to justify, I'm in the right here, so I can jump in and do this, And but at the end of the day, it was something in me that was.
And a lot of people do channel it that way, and you would have seen that in prison. A lot of the people, and you talk. Big, heavy, muscle-up, tattooed bikies. Yeah. A lot when you scrape the surface, it's from something that's happened in their past, and they're reacting with anger. There's this conception, and I think there's some merit to it that if you've been abused, you're possibly could abuse again. But that's not necessarily the case. You steer that in other ways, dysfunctional ways.
Yeah, that's right. The actual statistics around that are actually quite low.
Yeah.
It's quite bizarre, but you are right. What happens is it will manifest in some way. I quite often talk to a lot of addicts with the stuff that I do now, and I keep telling them that your addiction is a symptom of something much deeper. For me, that was trauma, and we need to find out what that is in each person, because it looks, like you said, different in each person.
To treat it.
Yeah.
The homes that you were placed in, were they orphanages? What were they, or temporary accommodation? What was the places? What's your sequence of events from there? Because you went in and went out a few different times.
Yeah, so up to the age of 7, we were removed 22 times and returned 22 times back to my parents. At the age of 7, I was put into an orphanage and then returned to my mum. Then I was moved to my dad at the age of 10. At 12, I started running away. I'd had a gutful of it. Yeah. And of course, running away back then was a crime. It was called uncontrollable. So I was charged with the crime of uncontrollable. I was put in first Warramai, Yasmar, then Darrick Boys Home. And I'll never understand how you take a child who's running away from violence and CSA, sexual abuse, to be placed into an institution that is equally violent with sexual abuse. Yeah. It's like, it felt like I had it written on my fucking forehead, and I'm sorry for swearing, but that's how I feel. Yeah. I had the misfortune, Gary, of when I was a little boy of looking like a pretty little girl. Yeah. And it's just that's the way I was wired. And so when I was in Yasmar, I was arrested with my brother, and we were put into the junior side. And what actually happens is they moved me to the senior side because someone in their infinite wisdom decided we're going to separate siblings, right? Because they're a power couple. So I get put onto the senior side when I'm only 13 with 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And while nothing happened in Yasmar, what did happen was people kept jumping in my bed when I'd have a shower. They'd grab me, touch me. I look at this. They'd masturbate beside me, and I'm like, what the and I, as a little kid, I'm still not comprehending why people are doing this.
How old are these other kids you're in with?
16, 17.
Oh, right. So completely different.
Different
stages.
That's
of
right.
life. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I'm prepubescent. Yeah. You know what I mean? These are kids that are at completely different stages, and they all thought it's a big joke and a laugh. But it set the precedent for the next institution I went to, which is Darrick, where I was abused twice, very savagely. One time in my bed, and once in a boiler room where an officer literally walks out of the room and leaves 6 guys with me, six almost adults, and this little tiny boy. And
turning a blind eye to it.
Turning a blind eye to it, and again, I just went silent. I was this silent kid, and what ended up happening is I've not had any violence in my life until Darrick. What happened was the guy asked me to have an arm wrestle with him, and I beat him in chess first, and then they said, you couldn't beat Fisher in an arm wrestle, so I give him this arm wrestle, and for some reason I've just gone bang and put him straight down. Yeah. He's gone bang and King hit me. I lost my shit. And it's the first time in my life it was like that song, Coward of the County, everything just come out of me in one go. Yeah. Something I was told me, you were reading told me wrong. I think they were reading me wrong because I just kept lashing and people are pulling me off and I'm going back. I actually grabbed the chair. I lost it. And it was like all of my rage was in that one incident.
Poured into there.
It poured into there. It was the first time I realised I was more capable than I had thought. All my life I'd been, people went like this to me. I did these ones. Yeah. I jumped and I always had my hands up, don't hit me, hurt me, don't hurt me.
Waiting to be hit.
Yeah, that's right. And because every time I'd even moved, as a kid, the violence was so much that I spent a whole lot of my life cowering. Yeah. And so that continued on as a child through these institutions.
When you unleashed like that, did that change the dynamics for you?
So what happened was there was this boy, and I won't say his name, but he was an older Indigenous boy. And when he got up, he put his hand on my head, and he said, "This little boy's got more ticket than half of you pricks in here." And he said, "The next one that puts their hand on this kid, he said they're going to deal with me." Yeah. And no one touched me again, but no one talked to me either. I just became I'm not there, But that was okay. As long as people weren't touching me, hitting me, hurting me, I was okay with that,
So how long were you in and out of the system for like that?
From the age of 7 to the age of about 14, I was in and out pretty much a fair bit.
Okay. There was one, I heard you talk about one place when you were released from the system and you went and you thought, oh, this is good, I'm being put in a house, and there was 9 adults or 9 people living in there and you were sleeping in a room with two adult male pedophiles.
That's right. So what actually happened was as soon as I got out of Darrick, my dad picked me up, and as soon as we got back to Gosford, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. I don't want to be in a home, and I don't want to be in a home of violence. I'm sick of being hurt, and I knew that it was going to continue, and so I just wanted to stop it. So I actually ran away to docks, and I went up and saw an officer at the Mount Druitt docks office, and I said, look, I said, I'm not trying to be a bad boy. I'm not trying to run away or cause trouble. I said, I'm scared and I'm sick of being hurt. Help me. And he said, oh, well, he rings around, he comes back and he said, well, I've got a foster family for you in Mount Druitt. Now, what I don't know is prior to my going there, one kid's been shot dead in their custody. Another girl has been abused in their care. There's 2 men with prior convictions
in this house. Placing kids in.
3-bedroom house, 9 people have lived there. It's like they're using foster kids to make money.
There's a payment that comes.
That's right,
from it.
and buying a house pretty much with all of us kids. But I get put into this room with 3 adult men and me, a little boy, and it didn't take long before it starts touching and hurting me, And I stayed in that house for about 5 or 6 months. Then what happens is I'm just sick of it, and my mum turns up drunk one day out the back, tries to have a fight with them all. And then about a month after that, because the docs were coming and taking me on visits with my siblings, she says, oh, we're moving to South Australia. She said, I've got a new boyfriend, he's got a job, and I want to bring the family back together and try and be a mum. And I, sold. I'm in. I want to do is be with my siblings.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm looking to be loved by my mum and my siblings, We stop at every pub all the way to South Australia.
The drinking problem.
Yeah, she's drinking. Yeah. And when we get there, her boyfriend and her have a big punch on in the caravan park. So my brother and I, 13 and 14, we try to jump in and fight for my mum. Ends up happening is she ends up kicking us out. We get put on a bus back to Oxford Street to meet my real dad in Oxford Street. I get off the bus and we're starving, Gary. We haven't eaten for, probably 3 or 4 days. And I'm really hungry. And I'm walking behind my dad with my brother. Then all of a sudden my dad stops and he turns around and says, where the fuck do you think you're going? He said, piss off. He said, you can go to your foster family. I don't want you, go away. And I remember sitting on Oxford Street in this bus terminal and I was just sobbing. And I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have the foster family now. I don't, everywhere I go, people are hurting me. I literally don't know what to do. And this man comes and sits down beside me. His name's Terry. He's a butcher in Oxford Street, a predator, and big, strong-looking guy, but talks really softly. Are you okay, little fella? Can I buy you something to eat? And I'm so susceptible to any kind of attention or love that I just fell into this man's charm, but something tweaked in me. As we're walking up Oxford Street, we walk up these stairs. All I've got is a little bag with a T-shirt and a pair of shorts in it. That's my life. Yeah. And I'm walking up there, and I said, I'm not going to come in, mister. I don't want to go in. Yeah. And I pulled the bag away, and I started walking. He grabs my hand, and he ends up getting the bag off me. Yeah. And then I just ran. And I ran all the way down, got to Central Station, and went back to my foster family, who didn't want me. So they drove me to Mount Druitt train station, gave me $5, and they rang a refuge in King's Cross called the Opposition Youth Refuge, and there was my journey about to go to King's Cross, and it was like, when I walked out that train station, I'm 14, you know what a 14-year-old, we think we know everything. I remember walking out that station and thought, no one's going to ever hurt me again. That's it, it's over. No person will ever touch me, control me, or hurt me again. Little did I know I was walking out of the pot and into the fire. I was literally walking into a predator's paradise. The place was littered with them. Yeah.
Hence the name of your book.
Yeah, Predator's Paradise.
Okay, so 14. And look, this is a story that we know it in a general sense. Everyone hears about the kids that end up on the streets of King's Cross, but this is your story on how you ended up there and the horrors that you've seen and been involved in the lead up to that. You get to King's Cross at 14. Take us through that journey.
So when I first get there, I'm curious. So I go into every building all the way up the left and every building all the way up the right. I want to know what's going on.
The bright lights, all that, the people around. So you're thinking, okay, well.
Yeah, the weird, the wonderful, the colourful. It was crazy. But what really got me was I met a whole lot of different kids that were on the street just like me. Yeah. And I didn't have to be tough. I didn't have to be handsome. I didn't have to be anything. I could just be Glenn. Yeah. And I fitted into this little group where we lived in this squat. And as you probably read in my book, and I'm going to try my hardest, but I actually get really emotional when I talk about her. Yeah. I met a beautiful girl. Her name was Linda. Yeah. And, she just loved me and I loved her. It was my first girlfriend. I'd never had a friend, let alone a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Here I've got this girlfriend that's just enamoured with me who was stunning, absolutely stunning, you know. And we were staying in squats and running around the street. We're playing chasings on the main street of King's Cross.
So how many kids are we talking about and what were their stories? What were their backgrounds?
All very similar.
Yeah.
So we had a group of about 12 that was in our specific group, but there was lots and lots of kids in multiple groups around the street.
What is it that they end up in the cross? What's it like? You were sent there, but what was it about the cross that attracted
Well, I
homeless
think it's the
kids and
system. I
traumatised
think
kids?
most kids talked amongst each other and knew that Manly,
Yeah.
Town Hall and King's Cross were the go-to spots.
Okay, because you'll find other kids in the same situation.
In the same situation. Most of them running away. They're sick of being hit. Their parents are alcoholics or heroin addicts or drug addicts. You know, not always. There's some kids that just bloody spoiled.
Because I suppose, and there would be enclaves in different suburbs, but if you're out in a suburb, you'd be on your own. And you found your tribe, basically.
A collective, yeah. And that's what it is. It's the safety in numbers thing. You know, we're in a group together, and so I always felt safe. And there was one guy that was bigger than me. He was Fijian, and he was my best friend. And I just was enamoured with this man because he was 14 too, but he was big and strong, you know. And he was like, you ever see that cartoon with the big dog and the little dog, and he's chasing him around?
You were the little dog.
That's kind of me, running around.
I can picture it.
Yeah,
Describe to us when you say, you know, we used to bed down in a squat. Like I've got a sense of it. I've seen those places, but describe it to people that it's a world that's foreign to them.
So this one specifically was in Manning Street. It was an old convent, and it was dangerous. It had no floor on 2 levels, and you used to walk up, and every room had either drunks or heroin addicts or people living in it. But there was one room up the end that was the kids' room. You know, and we had like crates all set up, and we had a couple of mattresses we dragged from somewhere. I don't know where they were there before I got there. We used to use beetroot to get dyed sheets to make curtains. It was kind of like, it was spray paints all over the wall. But it was our little spot. But it was quite volatile and dangerous, you know, because there was different people would use drugs, get alcohol, and they'd come and they'd see kids, and there was always young, pretty girls with us as well. So, you know, they'd sort of look at that as something, a challenge to them, you know, and we weren't capable of defending ourselves really against that.
You had one incident. You had some skinheads. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're all sitting there one time, and a group of skinheads had come up to use in the place, and they all walked into the room, and they were big boys, man. Like you know, they were big kind of guys, and we're like little skinny, you know, nothings. And they've all walked in, and they started talking to the girls, fresh meat, sniffing and doing all these things, you know, old enough to bleed, you know, saying these fucking crude shit to us. And like my mate, he gets up and he's like, stands up, and I'm like, there's about 8 of them, there's like one of him, and I'm like, I stand behind him tentatively, like, I'm there with you, bro, but I'm no good to you at all, but I'm here in support.
Well, it's always good to know someone's behind you.
But then there was a torch, I saw a torchlight, and I said to him, that's the coppers. Like, one thing I've always been good at is being smart. I can use my brains pretty well, and I said, that's the coppers. I said, because we're kids, they come here and check on us every hour. I said, they'll be up in a minute. And they sort of looked at each other, and bang, they were gone, you know. And then I wanted to go. I wanted to get out of there, and I told, let's get out of here.
Sexual abuse of the kids in there, and the notorious wall that we talk of in King's Cross and different things. Tell us the dynamics of that environment.
Yeah, so in the daytime there was the park. Fitzroy Park, which was outside the police station, right outside the police station, and all day long you'd see little boys sitting in there, and all these different men, and all who become known to me over my period in the cross, you know, and they'd come in, and like, they were very good at filling voids. What they did is they find the kid, and they find what it is that's missing in them. They need their tyres pumped. Do they need, you know, love? Do they need money, security, home, whatever it is? And they take these kids off. And the people I used to see come to there, and the war, specifically the war, was some people that would blow your mind. You know, some of the most powerful people in our country. I'm talking about teachers, principals, lawyers, politicians, movie stars, you know, and I won't name them all on camera, obviously, but I'm happy to share with you some of them, and it's like bizarre. And some of those people, I mean, I gave evidence at both commissions, and I named these people, but you know, they sealed our files, which I don't understand.
And so when these people approach, whether they're high profile or in positions of responsibility or anyone, when they're approaching the kids, they're offering them money for sex or whatever. That could be as simple as a feed. I'll take you for a feed. Yeah,
that's right. That's what they do. They come in, they go, how are you doing? You know, like the first one I met, I was playing a pinball machine. And he come up beside me and he goes, oh, you're winning, mate. I said, you know, like a little kid, pump my tyres. Oh, yeah, I'm doing really good. Oh, let me have a go with you. Yeah. We're playing, and then, oh, would you like something to eat? Oh, yeah. I'll go and have something to eat. And then, you know, we end up back at his house. Nothing happens the first time. You've read that in my book. But what actually happens is, as a prelude to the biker thing that happened, there was this big fight on the street of the Cross. And there was all these bikers and doormen just punching on. There was women involved. It was the most violent thing I ever seen. And being a kid, like I ran to the front of the crowd, but the crowd around me got so big that I kept getting pushed in to this crowd. And it was about 2 a.m. in the morning. A big hand comes through and literally pulls me out of the crowd, and he says, "Get the fuck out of the cross, bro. This is no place for kids." And a woman's screaming at me as well. And I'm like, and then the only place I knew to go, Gary, was the squat. But the squat was right down the back of the cross in this back lane. You had to go over a fence. It was like dark. It was sketchy. I was never going there on my own. And so the only place I knew to go was the pedophile's home.
Right.
You know, and so that's the first sort of introduction for me to a predator.
Yeah.
Whereas he says to me, "Oh, I know," and he was working for a guy, and I won't say his name, but some big pushes in the cross, you know. And so he's saying, "I can look after you, I can give you pot, I can give you money, you know, and all this sort of stuff." And he doesn't come on to me straight away, you know. He's like, I can have all my friends there, like it's like, what more do I want? But it comes with a cost. And that's what the cost was.
And they let your friends hang in there? And
that's right, and give them pot, and, you know, and so I'm suddenly popular because I've got pot to give out, and like it's, you know, and...
and when does the abuse start, or when does it...
Well, it starts there first, and but I'm living with my girlfriend. The thing about it is, all our girls know what's happening. It's like just how it works, you know.
Survival.
But where the real predatory stuff starts for me is, I got sick of this guy, and I end up moving out of there. And first one is I meet this guy at the park named Ken Fogarty, and who I've had convicted and charged. He says to me, "I'll give you money," and he raped me. It didn't turn out the way it should have, you know, like he actually abused me quite savagely. And then one day I'm sitting in the park with my girl and my friends, and these two little schoolgirls walk in the park. One's probably about 10, maybe 11 or 12, I don't know. They're very young, very, very young. I'm not good at identifying danger for myself, but instantly I thought, no, got to get these girls out of here. So I run over, and there's this guy comes walking over. He comes over, he says, "I'm a counsellor, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "The hell you are, mate. You're not taking them kids anywhere," you know. And I'm sort of standing up, and I've got 20 other kids behind me. It makes me kind of more brave, you know. So that gives me a little bit of Dutch courage, you know, like I'm sprucing off. But then he says, "I'm a counsellor," and the little people are peeling away as he's talking because he's very articulate, and he is a counsellor. He was in a refuge called the Homeless Children's Association. Now, this refuge was founded by a children's magistrate, Simon Davies, the guy I had convicted. So what happens is we agree that we'll go to the refuge with him. I'm letting these kids go anywhere with him on my own. So me and a posse of about 20 kids follow him all the way through the cross, all the way down to Liverpool Street to this refuge.
And the age range of these kids, when we're talking kids, what are we
Oh, we're talking from 12-year-olds up to 18-year-olds. You know, it's quite a...
All kids.
All kids, And we get to this refuge, and I walk in, and there's this guy with a wok eye looking all over the place, and he sits there and he goes, "Oh, you're Glenn, are you?" He said, "Oh, you're incredible. Look at the way all the other kids follow you." And then he just was so good at pumping my tyres.
Buttering you up. Compliments for the life that you've had. You'd be taking all the compliments you can get.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing that he said to me was, he said, "Let me tell you your story." He said, "I'd say that your mum and dad are probably alcoholics or addicts. You've probably spent most of your time in institutions and docks."
Amazing.
Amazing, man. How does he know all this about me? You know, and it's because he's met 100 other Glens, you know. And but what ends up happening is about a week after we move into this refuge with all my... So the part that's always carried guilt with me is that I go back to the kids and I say, "Oh, there's a refuge we can stay in. We're allowed to drink. We can take drugs. We can have our girlfriends sleep in the same bed. The only rule is no violence." You know, and it's right in King's Cross.
And you're thinking you've found paradise.
Paradise, So we move in there. What I don't know is that the 5 men working there are all pedophiles. It's an actual ring of predators who have targeted children, you know. And I can say this because I've had 4 of them convicted. You know, so about a week into my stay there, I'm sitting in the office and he says, "I've got a bottle of scotch. You want to drink?" And I'm like, "You going to let me drink alcohol?" "Oh, yeah, I'll do that." I've never been drunk, right? But I'll do that. So I'm drinking scotch, and then this other guy who I've had convicted, Paul Jones, he walks in and he goes, "I've got these pills. They're called Mandy's if you want one." I said, "Oh, what do they do?" "Oh, yeah, no, you'll love it. Makes you fun." Bang. I take that too. I'm sitting there playing guitar. The next thing I know is I wake up in the morning, I'm semi-naked, and I'm getting snippets of the night. And I'm like, fucking, it's happened again. You know, like that's what I'm going through. And I literally walk out of the refuge and I walk up to Grant Morris, who I've also had convicted, and I said, "I've been raped." And he goes, "What? By who, Glenn? By who?" And I tell him, and then his face sort of goes really white, and he goes, "I'll meet you tonight at the, I think it was called the Colonial Cafe. Come and talk to me and we'll sort this out." And I'm like, okay. And then I go up to the cross and I sit down with my girlfriend, And I heard someone talking about her. She sits on my lap. She puts her nose on me all the time. And she used to say, you know the song Vincent, Starry, Starry Night?
Yeah,
She used to always sing that song to me. And
song.
she used to put her nose on and sing this song. And she used to go, the world doesn't know you like I know you, Glenn. You're such a beautiful person, you know. And she'd say that to me all the time. And she said, but I know something's not right. What's going on? And I was too scared to tell her, you know, like I didn't want to say what's happened.
Yeah.
So I go to this, I also run into Annie Crow, who's the woman who also works at the refuge, and I tell her, when I arrive at the cafe, Grant Morris, Simon Davies, they were all at the cafe, and I sit down with them, and Grant jumps in, he goes, every child he has an adult that looks after him. That's how King's Cross works. You know, you're overreacting, you know, like, do you want to leave the refuge and all your mates go? You know, like, it's like, suddenly it's like, oh, what have I done wrong? Have I done something wrong? You know, what they taught me was that my body was a commodity.
Yeah.
And I started to learn that. I started taking drugs and to block out what's going on.
Yeah.
And then the money, I'm spreading it out with my friends because I'm a people pleaser and I want to please everyone.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got all these things going on.
It's a horrible situation, but you can see how it's very scripted in the way that they drag you in. They find the kids and then manipulate the situation.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, like, they give you all this stuff and then we're going to take it all away, you know, and plus the police are their friends. Everyone knew what was happening in this place, you know, and in 1983, January, another guy who runs a refuge comes to the refuge and he says, he calls in the judge and a general, right, and who run the refuge, and he says, Simon Davies is abusing the children. They call Simon Davies in and they say, you can no longer be the CEO or you can no longer reside at 429. But they never report the crime. They never come to the refuge, nor do they check if he lives at the refuge. And he resides there for another 8 months with the other 4 men who are abusing us kids.
It's got that stink of the church, isn't it? Like protecting their reputation, because a lot of them had a good reputation, or so-called good reputation, and that's what they were doing. With that environment, your story, is that your story very typical for other kids?
Yes.
The way they get caught up in it? Were the girls abused as well? Or what?
No, the girls weren't. All the boys were. Or the girls were in a different way. Yeah. They were going out at some point, and so they have it. Some went in strip clubs, some become into prostitution.
Yeah.
But so what happens in August? I come home with a couple of kids, and 2 of the other people that work in the refuge are standing there, and they say the refuge is being closed. Yeah. And they said, we can no longer stay here. And I said, you can go. We're not fucking going anywhere. Yeah. And I stopped my foot in, you know. Yeah. So us kids stay in this refuge. I contacted a journalist who came and put us on the front page of the paper. We're on the paper, you know. Yeah. Like it's, I remember it's August. The first issue in the Telegraph in August of 1983.
Right.
So what happened is, about 2 weeks after our stay there, the police come in the morning about 6 o'clock and arrest us. Like they come through everywhere, you know, and they take us all off.
Just break this down so I'll make sure with the story.
Yeah.
The refuge is supposedly shut down. The kids aren't. You guys, no, we're not leaving.
Yeah.
Cops have turned up the next day. You get charged with whatever charge was placed on you.
When they arrest all of us, every one of them's got some kind of warrant for wanted for something in the past. I'm literally the only one that didn't. Right, because I didn't do crimes. Yeah. So I get let out. But what happens is I start speaking about our abuse. This is where I start talking to police. I start saying this is what's going on. Yeah. But what's happening is, and this is the big part of the story that people don't understand in King Cross, people were picking up kids at the wall, at the park, and places like this. They were taking them to establishments in the Cross. They're being filmed. So what happens is the people that are filming it are now compromising these people who are coming in and touching these children, right? Yeah. So that's kind of how it works. So what ends up happening is I start speaking, I get out, and then the next day I'm sitting in the park with another girl and a friend, and these 2 police walk over to me and they said, that's him. And they grab me and they charge me with assault and robbery, right? So I get put into Minda, another institution, for a crime I didn't do. And then in December they take me to court into Bajura. They dismissed the charge, but they placed me into the custody of my primary abuser, Simon Davies, in Carlton Crescent in Summer Hill.
Just break that down again. Yeah. So you were charged, you were bail refused, you were put into custody. The charges were dropped when the hearing actually took place. Yep. But you were then sent from the court. And how old are we at this stage?
So now I'm about 16.
Okay, sent from the court.
Yep.
to live with Simon Davies, the person that you've been saying has been abusing you.
That's right, yeah.
To live with him.
And the same court where that person was made aware in the beginning of 83 of him abusing me, where he was systematically removed supposedly as the CEO and able to live at the refuge.
Right. How did that work out? Did you go there or just...
I did, and so I actually don't think I had to, but I just, because I was such a kid at, like, the systems, controlled me my whole life. Yeah, that's right. So I'm doing what I believe I'm supposed to do. But after about 2 weeks of sleeping in his bed with him in his room in his parents' home, his sister comes up to me one day and she says, "Glenn, you should not be sleeping in that bedroom with Simon. What is going on here?"
Yeah.
She confronts her parents, so the parents end up kicking us out or kicking me out.
Yeah.
And he puts me into a flat, and he leaves me in this place with this guy that runs it, and he says, "I'll leave you here for the night," and he said, "I'll be back tomorrow." He didn't come back. For 2 weeks, he just left me there, and then I remember sitting there waiting for that knock, and he said, "Come on, mate, your dad's not coming." I told him he was my dad.
Yeah.
"Your dad's not coming back, mate." And he opened up and kicks me out.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where I start to realise what's happening. But the problem is, and this is the part of my story I don't like sharing, I'm now a heroin addict, and the only way I know how to survive is prostitution.
Right.
And that's what's happened.
So, that works in the favour of the predators, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
They get you addicted, and so you'll do anything for the addiction.
That's right.
And you've been dragged into that.
Yeah.
And that was a cycle in the cross. That's your story, but that's a sort of generic tale on how kids end up in the cross, getting abused and getting addicted to drugs.
I saw so many kids, Gary, and I can name so many of them that would arrive, these beautiful, big, smiling kids.
Yeah.
The next thing you see them in a club stripping or whatever, a year later they've either overdosed, suicided, been murdered, or they're just a cringe of who they were walking up and down on the street of William Streets now trying to work for themselves because they're no longer a commodity to the club, because they don't look the good anymore.
What about the policing and and I want to talk in part two about you giving evidence at the Royal Commission, so talking general sense that the policing in King's Cross, maybe no, I'm not naive. I know there's good cops and I know there's bad cops, and they were certainly identified in the Royal Commission where flushed some people out. But even that in the world of policing is, it's one thing taking $1. It's another thing if you're turning a blind eye to kids being sexually abused. What's your take on that environment?
So what the police were doing was they would, if I went into the police and said, "This is what's happened to me," they would then go to the pedophile and say, "This is how it rolls. You give us 10,000 or we have you charged." And then what would happen was they'd pay. So they'd have them in the pocket, and often they'd come back to us or not come back to us at all and lock us up or for a fictitious crime, which is what kind of happened. The police were, mate, I cannot emphasise enough the evilness of the police at King's Cross, and I won't name them all, but there was so many. I mean, one of them at court in Glebe, you probably read in my book, grabbed me by my throat and pushed me up against the wall, and he said, "If I hear any more complaints from you," he said, "you'll be floating in the river." They used to call me Mr. Ombudsman, and the funny thing about it was someone on my behalf wrote a letter to the Ombudsman about police beating me up really savagely one time. I didn't even do it, but they thought that I had. So every time they see me, they go, "Here he is, Mr. Ombudsman." And these were some of the most dangerous. Like back then, I was a little cocky. I didn't know what I know now, and that they were dangerous. These police were very dangerous, and there's nothing worse than they have the power to do whatever they want. You can't do anything about it.
Well, it's power that can be abused. This is your version of it. I don't think I'm naive. There must have been some good cops in there that pushed back against that type of thing. Because I'm just trying to think all the cops I know. If I can't even comprehend one that would buy into that, but I'm not doubting what you've said. And there was a history of it, and I suppose not just cops. Like people knew what was going on. There was businessmen. There was all sorts of people, and turned in a blind eye because the money was being made. And let's not kill the cash cow.
Yeah, that's right, because that's what it was about, the money. The children of the cross were the commodity. They were the commodity, you know what I mean? And then they had the dealers that were also being protected by police. Like I'm telling you, it happened. And you are right, there is a handful of good coppers in there. I had police, someone got murdered in the cross. I don't know the whole story, but they arrested me on it. And this other cop who's walked in, he goes, look, I know this kid. He hasn't got a violent bone in his body.
Yeah.
You know, and they end up letting me go. So there was those that did have empathy, and there's others who have bought me food at different times.
What about the gangsters, the bikies, and all that? What was their role in this? Because they must have known it was going on. Did they pull anyone in the line or?
No, the bikies were okay. The bikies were actually quite good with kids.
Yeah.
They really were. And I mean, although I used to sell for the bikies at a very young age, you probably read that in my book. I was selling, I won't say what club, but I was selling speed for the bikers. They were all very good to me and protected me that way. In fact, one of the stories you probably read in my book was I was walking down the street and I'm like this. Yeah, and this biker walks up to me and he goes, grab me by my ear, like literally grabbed my ear and dragged me down to the Porkies. And the guy was being wheeled out on a gurney. And he pulls the blanket up. The ambulance drivers are horrified and they just step back because he's a big boy, right? And he goes, see that? He said, you want a hit? He said, I'll give you a hit. Guaranteed to put you on that every time.
Yeah.
You know, like he was trying to help. But it didn't work. Once I was in, I was in.
And what about the working girls as well? Because you got some people that were sort of doing their best to keep an eye out for the kids.
Yeah, the ones that looked after me the most were the people you least expect. They were bikers, street strippers, prostitutes, and heroin addicts. They that was dog eat dog in some parts of the world, but when it come to kids, they did protect us. They see me. Sally Ann, she used to give me money all the time to go. She used to say, don't you buy black and heroin? So I'm not going to buy heroin. Just go and buy something to food. No, I'll take it, she said. She used to take me to this place called the Astoria or the Cosmopolitan.
Sally Ann Huckstep, you're talking there.
I thought she was nuts. Like, I'm just being honest. When she started telling me all about what's going on across at a very young age, I'm just sitting here eating my food. Yes, Sally. You know, like okay, Sally. You know, like it's like it's just like I think she's. You know, we got these tinfoil hats these days. That's what Sally kind of. I thought when I first met her. Because the way she talked about, and you be careful of this person, you be careful of this, but she was really coming from a loving place. Yeah. You know, and she's not alone. There was many of them. Roz, Sam. There's so many street workers who would see a little boy like me, and it was almost like they'd adopt me. You know, it was like, have you eaten today, little fella? You know, come sleep on my lounge. You know, and they'd all look after me, but. At the same time, they were still supporting their own heroin habits.
It's so fucked up, isn't it? The people that you would think you'd be at risk from are the ones that were protecting you, and the people that should be protecting you, you were at risk from. Yeah,
that's right.
The system, just before we move on, the cross these days, have you got a sense of it? Has it changed?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I go in the cross every week, as you know, because I work on the streets now. Yeah. And it's completely changed. It's a completely different dynamic. The ambience, the whole feel of the cross is different. There's still a flicker of addiction, and there's still the shooting gallery in Kirkland Road, and there's a couple of strip clubs. But for the most, I mean, you got to be a billionaire to live there these days, mate. It's like
the demographics have changed.
It's completely changed. It's Yuppiesville.
I get that. Get that sense. Well, look, we might take a break for part one. A further listener warning. You think Glen's life couldn't get much worse at this stage, what he's described, but we're going to talk about it, and there were things that rock you to the core. Yeah. But there's the positive, so we better dangle that carrot at the end. You're hearing Glen talk, and if anyone should be bitter and broken, it'd be Glen, but that's not the sense I'm getting. So we're going to take Glen even deeper into the troubles that he's experienced in his life, but we'll also cover off on how he turned his life around and the good work you're doing now.
Yeah, awesome.
Cheers.